So Sintopia is a smart and funny automation roguelike with a great personality. But its punishing trial and error design, the hidden meta of the game makes the discovery feel like it's kind of not for me. And once everything clicks, the game is done. When you compare the game to other automation games like Satisfactory, Shapes 2, or maybe even like Alchemy Factory, it is very clear that in those games, once you solve the puzzle, the mystery, the actual game begins. While in Sintopia, once you solve the puzzle, you can basically put the game down. Right as you launch Sintopia, you notice the detailed menu screen. The queue line with the secretary typing out while some cool background music is playing. It feels perfect for a screen that is basically waiting for your input to begin playing the game. This attention to detail and the love is very clearly felt throughout the whole game. For example, when you zoom in on the buildings that are in charge of removing sins from the sinners, from the NPCs, I think they're called homos, which is kind of funny, you see how each one of them is decorated perfectly to fit the function of the building itself. So if it's supposed to take care of gluttony, there's going to be a bunch of food all around. Greed, there's going to be money drained down the sink. Every building has something related to whatever it's doing, and it looks very nice to just zoom in and look at this. The music is great. Developers even added their own original songs that are related to the game, to hell and all these kind of themes. I don't know if I can play them on YouTube. I'm gonna try. When I started playing the campaign, things seems a little chaotic, but as I played more and more, the characters kind of grew on me and I began to feel a little bit more interested in the background and the stories. The main story isn't something to die for, and I cannot fully comment on it because I haven't finished it and I likely never will. So why is it that I praise the game so much, but I won't continue playing the game? Well, one main reason, which is the title for this video, once you figure out Sintopia, the game ends. The playtime you will spend on this game will mostly be trying to figure out the optimal way to place your buildings while you're using your administrative powers to help balance the journey. Every lose will actually help you understand another mechanic that you can apply on your next run. Something that is clearly liked by many people, but I am not one of them. I felt like I was punished for information I didn't have 40 minutes later, so it was very hard to figure out why I had lost, rather than a very clear bottleneck in my belts in other automation games, or like a boss mechanic which I just didn't avoid. I really tried to give it as many chances as I could because I really wanted to see the whole campaign, because I'm very interested in the characters and the lore. I very often felt like the story was attached to the game as like an afterthought and would have fitted more to like a turn-based game which had much more room to breathe than an automation game where characters and lore would just have more time to brew. I personally was looking more for quality of life rather than a story, which we will talk about in a second. The voice actors really sold the game to me because cutscenes are really not that plentiful. It is also very funny once you realize that some characters like Lily and I think she's called Janine, the secretary lady, are voiced by the same person, just doing different voices, and it made me like audibly laugh when I was thinking about some lady sitting in a booth talking to herself in two different voices. Kind of funny, no? I also love how they talk about bureaucracy. Like even one of the bigger parts of the campaign was to defeat God by finding some kind of filing error he made in the forms he sent in order to create the universe. That's pretty funny, like how even God loses two papers. I think even Lily says something about this. She has like a line on it or something.
Well, actually, scratch that. In this world, there is one thing that does scare me. Something absolutely vile and truly evil. Bureaucracy. Untouchable, pernicious, all-powerful, gifted for only will, the desire to expand, to regulate and infest everything it touches. Concepts, creativity, or individuals, it spares nothing.
The best way I can explain the gameplay to you is imagine somebody giving you a half-painted on canvas and telling you to finish it, versus somebody giving you a clean canvas with a bunch of brushes and paints saying, yeah, do whatever you want with the tools I gave you. Those would be wildly different results and journeys for both of the approaches. Now, not even one of them is wrong. Both of them are valid. but one of them is liked more by me. The game really wants you to not build in an orderly, square, efficient way, so it just throws a bunch of unplaceable tiles where you can't build anything on it, as well as a bunch of environmental hazards that are going to destroy your employees' morale and therefore destroy your productivity of your buildings. And the result is just going to be some sort of a spaghetti and everything just spread around. You won't build in like squares here. There are some questionable design choices where it comes to the logic gates and the buildings themselves. The game has a sorter that allows you to set a certain parameters and order to those parameters in order to send NPCs in different ways. So let's say one output is going to be full out of the 3 that are available. The NPCs won't continue going forward to an empty exit, even if you designate that exit as like the fallback exit. So whatever happens, this is the place they go to if they have nothing else to do, right? What you have to do in order to solve the situation is create a T-junction, where half of the people will go to wherever you want them to go, right? And then the other half will go back into the same line and continue going straight. That's the only way the NPCs, if they see a full line, won't wait and actually will go the other way around. Why doesn't it do that right out of the sorter, the gate, whatever you call this thing? I don't know why, but it's just an example of small things like that that kind of don't make any sense. The game also gives you a nice variety of tools like copy-paste buildings, and you also copy the rules that are inside the building, so you don't have to set the rules again. But it's only for right now, it's not for future saves. You can also delete objects, you can even move them. And what I did lack was actually a way to move a group of buildings or an entire area, because there's going to be a bunch of times where you place some doctors, you place some buildings, but then you progress the game. Now there's more hummus, so you need more buildings. So you might want to push those things a little bit backwards or a little bit to the side, but you can't. You can only do this one thing at a time, so one building at a time. You have to remake the roads, you have to reconnect all the waiting lines and everything like that. So there's some quality of life things that actually were missing here. And especially because for the campaign, you're constantly doing the same thing over and over again. You're doing the same basic, like placing down the doctors and then upgrading to the specialists once you have more seniors and everything. Like slowly you're doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. It was getting very annoying. I would really love to see some like blueprint thing or something like that. I also talked about doing multiple runs and even called the game a roguelike because yes, there is a lot to learn if you want to run hell efficiently, but I don't think the game necessarily makes it enjoyable and easy to learn. I dislike the concept of roguelikes, so it's probably the main reason why I don't find this game as enjoyable as somebody else will. Having to learn something like sending high sin counts NPCs to a specialist, even if they are not deviants, after the game taught you that deviants are supposed to go to the specialist, is a little bit confusing. And the first time you learn it, you won't realize it immediately. But it will take you a few runs where you test some things, you move things here and there, you mess with the rules a little bit, and only then you'll understand the problem. And each one of those runs is going to be like, what, 30 minutes to an hour? And you're going to do the same thing. All of this is going to be just for one thing to learn, and this game has so much in it to learn. In the starting hours, I found myself constantly either not making enough money or making tons of it, but I was looting the temple in the overworld, and thus I was looting the entire run. As the hours flew by, I started having longer and longer runs until I eventually was able to reach the end game and pretty much clear the map of any enemies. On the way there were some actual cool events like the Pillars of Atonement, which kinda trigger a whole worldwide event. And the event can be like multiple things. It could be like NPCs jumping out of the map, like to their death or drowning. It could maybe spawn a bunch of enemies to come attack you. There's gonna be a bunch of those Pillars of Atonement, and it's pretty cool to witness them. The main problem is, once you do the event, it's done. It doesn't seem to repeat. And it's kind of in general, once you reach the end game, it's pretty much just you. I mean, you can harass your NPCs by like shooting meteor on them and things like that. It's gonna give you something to fix, but if you just left them to their own devices, they will pretty much prosper. They can take over the entire map. You might need to switch leaders from time to time, but it's very hard to lose once you reach the end game. Now, I clearly didn't play on the highest difficulty, not even close. I played on normal. I think the reason why is pretty clear. I didn't want to spend more time trying to figure out this puzzle. I just didn't find it as enjoyable as somebody else probably will. And as a bonus reason, I usually tend to play everything on normal first to see what the developers intended, what's the default journey, what's the experience they want you to have with the game. I would have loved it if the game was less punishing, maybe not less punishing, but at least highlighting the mistakes as you're doing them, so you'll be able to fix them on the spot and you won't have to guess what your mistake was and constantly do the same thing over and over again, maybe even make the same mistakes like 2-3 times in a row just because you don't know they were mistakes. As I hinted at earlier, I really liked the campaign. It really took me a second to like all the characters. There's some characters that I still don't really, they're not really doing it for me. I don't really understand them. All the characters are going to be like exaggerated caricatures of office workers. There's going to be like Larry, which is kind of the horny, flirty, fat guy who is always like looking for the ladies. Ladies like Lily, which is a succubus, which just seems to want to progress at work to higher and higher position, and she really doesn't mind using like her womanly charms to do so. There's gonna be Janine, which is the uptight secretary who she hates work, but she's always gonna follow everything according to the rules. And then finally there's gonna be the professor, which I don't have much to talk about because he pretty much puts me to sleep every time he talks. There's also God technically, but I didn't play enough to catch his character. He's always very busy. I assume later on as you play like the later missions, he's probably gonna appear more and more. I stopped playing the campaign at mission, I think 5 or 6. It was just too much to keep resetting the same layouts again and again and again and do the same thing all over again. Right at the moment that you start harvesting the fruits of your hard work and you're placing of all the infrastructure, the level is over and you have to start over in a new level. It really killed my motivation every single time. I had to restart everything from the start. And I found myself actually taking time off from gaming before I played the next level, which is something I've never done in my I don't know how many years of gaming. I've never stopped like gaming in a row. It never happened to me. Once again, it's really sad because I really liked the story and I wanted to know more about the world. I'm just not liking it so much that I'm willing to power through the sections that I didn't find enjoyable. I will probably just watch somebody else play it so I can actually see the story moments. So feel free to suggest anybody you think is recommended to watch in the comments. Now, I wouldn't say that the technical state of the game was terrible, but it also wasn't great. All of the problems I had were in later on files, so as you start the game, you won't notice anything because there's nothing on the map. It's pretty much clean. But when you get to like hundreds of NPCs on the surface and hundreds of NPCs under the surface, souls in hell, then you start to see the FPS start going slowly going down. I also had crashes multiple times. All of them were just endgame things. I assume because I had so much shit on the map, like a ton of NPCs, spell slots, not spell slots, spell effects. I can't speak. Everything just bleh, right? So I can kind of understand, but I would have expected a little bit better performance. It's a new game. I assume they will fix it as time goes on. Sintopia is one of the most interesting, actual flawed games I played recently. It had a very funny writing, it had great music, it had a cool world, and it had a very strong premise. I would have actually loved to learn more about the setting for the world, but the deeper I understood it, the more I felt like the freedom to build things was shrinking into optimization. And that's a problem for a game that is about building hell your own way. So for me, understanding Sintopia makes the game end faster.